Cheers.
Okay, well, maybe we should we can start rolling and get going. Would you be maybe? I guess I'll let you lead and decide on how you want to open up and talk about what you all do, and then we'll pour some whiskey.
Sure. So I'll keep an introduction fairly brief because I've already spoken a little bit about the Hunter Laing company. So yes, as I said, we're a family business, and it's essentially my brother and I, Scott is my elder brother, and I and our father Stuart. We're based in Glasgow in the west of Scotland. We are historically, our family's been involved in the whiskey industry since the 1940s. So my grandfather founded his original whiskey business in 1948 as a blender and a bottler of Scotch whiskies. And he built up stocks of single malts and grains, single grain whiskies throughout the 50s and 60s and 70s, and was creating his own blended scotches with them and selling them primarily to, actually, I think at the beginning to the Americas, being US, Canada as well, and very much also to Central and South America. So his focus in the early days and kind of post-war years was on looking west. And I don't think they really in those days bottled or had a demand for single malt whiskey. And the kind of modern boom of single malt is probably traced to the 60s, but then to the beginning in the 60s, but really more taking off in the 80s and 90s, really. And in fact, as a family, the old family business, because we restructured the family business in 2013, the old family business really only introduced the old malt cask range, which is our Hunter Laing's flagship series of single cask bottlings. Only introduced that in 1998. So that was when the whiskey market was becoming a lot more interested in the different distilleries in Scotland, the variety, and really beginning to evolve into what we see now, which is a kind of situation where there's a huge demand for knowledge, for variety, and very much for quality. And so back in the late 90s, my dad and his brother, who they were working together then, started to go into their stocks of single malts and really say, rather than blending these, putting these into 25-year-old or 30-year-old aged deluxe blended scotches, let's pick out these single casks which have matured particularly well or are of particular interest, and let's bottle them as single cask or small batch bottlings of single malts. And these are what's known as independent bottlings. So that's really where we've evolved as a company, so that today we are what's known as an independent bottler. Independent bottlers, which there are a few, and we're probably one of the more well-established ones. Independent bottlers source new spirit from distilleries all over Scotland. So we will import empty casks from the United States, bourbon barrels, or from Spain, sherry casks, and send them to the distilleries that we work with and ask them to fill them with new spirit for us, fresh off the still. And then they'll either mature them in their warehouses at the distillery itself, and that could be a distillery from the Orkney Islands all the way down to Islay and everywhere in between. Or we will bring them back to Glasgow, where we're based, and we'll mature them in our own premises in Glasgow. And then we'll monitor them over the years, check the quality, make sure they're maturing as we want them to. And then when we're ready, or when the whiskey is ready, we will bottle it. And we will bottle the whiskey under one of our own brand names, whether that's the aforementioned old malt cask, whether it's Hepburn's Choice, which is the first whiskey that we're trying, or if it's a particularly old whiskey, we bottle it under our old and rare label. And these are different ranges, but they're pretty much the same concept, where the cask is hand selected, and we feel it's ready for bottling, and then we'll empty the cask. If it's in the old malt cask or the Hepburn's Choice range, we'll add a little bit of water to bring it down to 46% or 50% alcohol, but that's it. We don't add any artificial colouring, caramel, and we do not chill filter the whiskey. So we're leaving all the essential oils in the whiskey, and then we bottle it and put the tasting notes on the label and export it. And from a single cask, you're really getting 200 to, if it's a large sherry cask, kind of a maximum of 500 bottles from the cask. So they're all by nature very limited editions, and this is a very enjoyable and rewarding way of doing business. And we've got good, knowledgeable customers all around the world. Our biggest markets, probably pretty easy to guess that we're in Europe. The UK is a good market. Germany is a good market. There are lots of smaller markets, which are smaller countries, but have a real appreciation for single malt whiskey. Switzerland, Italy, and in the Far East, Japan, huge whiskey culture in Japan, of course. They really appreciate and understand quality and single malt whiskey. And of course, Taiwan and China, Greater China in general, are becoming enthusiastic consumers. But of course, we very much like dealing with the Canadian market, and we know there's a big Scottish diaspora there, and it's always great to go to Canada. So we're very close emotionally to Canada and to the Canadian market. So yes, so I think I've probably pushed my luck long enough and tried your patience, and everyone's been characteristically polite. So I think we should all reward ourselves with the first dram now, if everyone's in agreement.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Agreed.
Okay, excellent. So Sean, I don't know if you or Lee are able to share an image of the first whiskey we're trying, or not.
I think everybody's got it, that one. Go ahead, Lee, you've got it?
Oh, you've got the full bottles. Fantastic.
For the Milton Duff, yeah.
For the Milton Duff, they've got the full bottles, so they all know the packaging there intimately, I'm sure by now.
Good. So yeah, you'll see that on there we put as much information as we can fit on the label without it being too cluttered. The name Hepburn's Choice, by the way, I've talked about my grandfather on my dad's side, who was in the whiskey industry his whole life, but my maternal grandfather, whom we never knew really because he died when we were young, but he was in he worked for the British Foreign Office and spent his life traveling the world. And as a Scotsman living in various far-flung places around the world, he would always have a dram to remind himself of home. And at various embassy functions, he worked in embassies, he would always enjoy spreading the gospel of Scotch whiskey. And so his name was William Hepburn, and so we wanted to name our range in honor of him. So we believe these whiskies would have met with his approval. So that's where the name comes from. And the labels, we use the same color coding across all our ranges. And Speyside is represented by the color red. So that's why the labels are that red color. You'll see the other Hepburn's Choice bottlings have green for Islay, blue for the islands, purple, it's a Highland malt. So the Milton Duff Distillery is a fairly large, fairly modern distillery in the Speyside region. Speyside, as we all know, I'm sure, produces generally in modern times, by which I mean kind of post-war, generally unpeated whiskies. So no peat really used in the malting process. There are a couple of exceptions, but Milton Duff is not one of them. So this is an unpeated whiskey. Typical Speyside characteristics are quite floral, quite perfumed. The Hepburn's Choice range, as I said earlier, we reduced the alcohol to 46%. So 46, you'll see a lot of independent whiskies or whiskies aimed at kind of more connoisseurs tend to be bottled at 46%. And you might ask, why 46? How did we alight on this particular strength? It's because at 46%, it's really the lowest that you can go in terms of alcohol before it starts to become cloudy. If you add more water and bring the strength down below 46, then the congeners and the spirit start to react and cloud, and so you get this what's called flocculation, and it's not very attractive. So we tend to not go below 46%. Otherwise, we would have to chill filter it. So a whiskey that's bottled at 40% has been chill filtered. Chill filtration, of course, is when you lower the whiskey temperature to a couple of degrees and force it through a kind of pad, which is basically like a coffee filter, and that strips out these congeners and leaves a nice clear looking whiskey, clear like this. But you also take out a lot of the mouthfeel and a lot of the flavor, especially on the finish. So that's why it's always best, in my opinion, to drink whiskey that's not been chill filtered.
Does anyone have any notes or anything that they're getting out of the whiskey, or any particularly unique flavors that you're noticing?
Yeah, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, and you can type into the chat too. You don't have to unmute and chat with us, fine folks, but you're welcome to type it out.
I've always loved how round Milton Duff is. It's so dangerously palatable. And when you when you guys tried this, and it was one of those kind of luck of the draw, we brought in a nice amount for Alberta, and then when Sean tried it, we kind of looked around. Has anybody else had this yet? And so we're happy to say this is a Calgary exclusive for Five Vines, because I had only so much, and it just so happens the club is so big that you guys jumped all over it. So much appreciated, and it's great to get Andrew on to chat about these things. What time is it there, Andrew? 2 in the morning?
Yeah, 2:30 or 2:20 now. Yeah.
So you were just getting home from the club, anyways.
I'll go out to the clubs after this.
How European?
Just had dinner.
Nice. The Spanish cask influence.
Absolutely, yeah. I've really missed, because of what's been happening. I haven't been able for 2 years in a row now to go to visit our cask suppliers in Spain, which is really disappointing, because normally as a salesman, you're selling, of course, but it's quite nice to go to Spain and be sold to for a change. And whenever we go to Jerez, our partners take great pains to show us every inch of the sherry bodegas and show us around the region, and it's great. And of course, sherry casks are a big part of the Scotch industry.
Spanish hospitality, you have to be in for the long haul. They're going to feed you at 10 o'clock at night.
They pick us up from the train at 10 in the morning, and then we're still with them at 1, 2 the next day in the morning without a break.
And whatever they feed you, you got to eat all of it.
Yes. Oh yeah. A lot of cold cuts. There's no vegetarianism allowed in Jerez.
Nice.
Same like Calgary, really, in my experience.
Well, they eat more jambon than we do. Ours is all about Alberta beef, and we make you eat the whole steak. That's for sure.
So anyone got any particular notes on this? I think 11, by the way, is a great age. Sorry, Kamala. Please.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say, it kind of, has a bit of a honey flavor to me, just reminiscent of honey. And that,
Yes. Yeah.
that roundness that you get from honey, that soft kind of almost texture that with the sweetness.
And the heather that's in there is really a nice
the floral
overtone that just floats down and keeps in with the as the
finish.
aftertaste,
the
finish.
Sure.
I don't know if it's heather, but it's flowery, as you mentioned before. But
Yeah, could be heather, for sure. Yeah, I think
Wow.
it's just typical of a Speyside whiskey to get that nice that caramel and that honey note coming through. Sometimes a vanilla, maybe might expect some vanilla in there. A little bit of fruitiness going on. Just as Lee says, it's quite drinkable, and that 46%.
It's so good. I'm seeing lots of smiles.
Yeah, I wouldn't add any water myself to this. I think 46 is quite good drinking strength for this one.
And this one goes into the Chivas Regal blend, doesn't it?
It might do, Lee. It might. I think probably Ballantine's would.
Okay, it's owned by Pernod Ricard, and I know they've got Ballantine's, Chivas Regal, and I think Passport. But yeah, I think you're right about the Ballantine's for sure.
Yeah, and yeah,
As a blend, it's a pretty round, good fruit forward. I get a little stone fruit from this one as well, kind of that peachy nectarine kind of note.
Yeah, those kind of soft fruits. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, if it's a younger whiskey, it tends to take from our point of view, we will want to reduce the alcohol a little bit more. If it was an old whiskey, 25-year-old, we would normally leave it at the cask strength, or 25, 30 years old. The older whiskies become, in our opinion, it's better to leave them alone and then try them at cask strength, and then add a few drops of water just to open up the nose, maybe soften the alcohol a bit. But often with an older whiskey, even at cask strength, you don't feel the alcohol so much, and it's better to allow to leave the alcohol higher, to allow that alcohol to deliver the more subtle flavors better to your palate. Whereas if it's a more boisterous younger whiskey at cask strength, so this would have been in the high 50s when it came out of the cask, we want to soften that exuberance a little bit, just with some water to bring it down. And so that's why we bottle the Hepburn's Choice range at that lower strength.
So I'm all curious about where would we go next? Are we going Talisker, rum, or Scarabus? And
yeah, I would probably go Talisker, then Scarabus, then the rum. The rum's for dessert, Sean. It's a sweet rum.
yeah, absolutely, I agree. I hope that everybody brought their creme brulee.
Nicely, yeah. Talisker 9, absolutely. Great. Lee, I'm
I actually have a bit of the old package. When you go into the store, you might see a couple of different packages for Hepburn's Choice. So the one that you've seen with the Milton Duff, and again with the Talisker, is the new and much more colorful. And then the older one here, this is an Ardmore 10-year-old that we do, and this is in the old cask. So keep your eyes peeled. One of the fun notes about the different packagings that they do, whether it be first edition, old malt cask, or Hepburn's Choice, is there's a color code that goes along with them. So whenever you see anything with some purple, that would be a Highland. If you see them with blue, those will be Island whiskeys. I believe red is Speyside, green is Lowland.
Isla.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, Lowland is light blue.
Light blue, that's right.
And rarely seen is Campbelltown, which is only has 2.5 distilleries in it, and that's orange we go for with that one.
I've been working with you for 8 years,
Mhm.
and I think I've squeezed a couple of Campbelltowns out of you. We just don't seem to have that many. They either I can't afford them, or they get all gobbled up in the UK before I get a chance to get them over here.
Yeah, well, because yeah, the time difference works against you. I think we
It does.
released the price list, and by the time you wake up, they're sold out. But
That
having
can give me
said
a
that,
heads up, you know.
we do have the Campbelltown Journey launching, which is launched now. So
I saw that on LinkedIn. That looks amazing. We'll have to get some samples of that up here for you.
for sure. The Ardmore that you've held up there, the Ardmore is one of the interesting ones. It's a peated mainland whiskey, so it's technically not a Speyside. It's a Highland, which is more general mainland Scotch region. But it's a fantastic distillery, Ardmore. It's just got that Highland peat in it, so Isla peat. So the Lafroigs, the Kalilas, they've got that maritime peat note, and the seaweed, the seashells. Whereas Highland peat is much more warming. It's kind of campfire, kind of almost softer, more embracing peat flavors. So definitely, if you like a peated Scotch but haven't tried Ardmore before, I would definitely suggest checking that one out. It's great that you've got a few bottles still remaining of that. But talking of peat, why don't we move on to the Talisker then?
Yeah, and I'm really curious to learn more about this one because I don't see a lot of independently bottled Talisker.
Yeah, Talisker is we're fortunate to have some casks of Talisker, but it's very rarely seen as an independent bottling, and in our stocks it's also quite rare as well. Talisker, of course, for a long time was the only distillery on the Isle of Skye. There's now another one called Toravaig, which they just launched in their first bottling this year or last year. But Talisker is the big one, the famous one, huge reputation, quite a large distillery now actually. And so this particular one again, 46% Hepburn Choice range. That kind of 9-year maturation length leaves quite a lot of the, to use that word again, that exuberance, that spirited youthfulness still in there. I'm afraid, Lee, I don't actually have a sample of this one in front of me because it's sold out.
I'm almost sold out too.
Is this the sherry finished one?
This one here is absolutely the sherry one. I should know that because anytime you guys have a Talisker, I jump on it.
Yes.
Because they're so rare, because it's so delicious. And one of the things that I love about Talisker is their judicious use of peat. And they don't get that hard driving rain that brings that really salty Isla element. I love that. But it's not for everybody, so I can please a lot more people with the Talisker, with that subtle amount of smoke and that still kind of rounder fruit-driven character, especially when it's done in a sherry cask.
Yeah. So the Talisker spirit is very distinctive. Probably along, I would say it's probably the top 3 or 4 most distinctive Scotch single malts in terms of the actual character of the spirit coming off the still. And people always use this word to describe Talisker, which is peppery. It's got this sort of prickly, peppery kind of note to it. And because it's used so much, and when I detect it in the spirit, I'm never sure if it's just a case of suggestion or if it is actually there. But I think it is, because I can usually identify it in a blind tasting of young, slightly peated whiskies. Highland Park doesn't have it, and other lightly peated whiskies like peated. Trying to think what's like maybe Bowmore, young Bowmore, or peated Tobermory don't really have that. It's quite distinctive. The Talisker distillery uses something which is relatively uncommon in the industry today, which is worm tub condensers, where when the spirit is being condensed back into liquid from the vapor coming off the stills, it uses the more traditional form of condenser, which is a large kind of serpent tube of copper that is coiled round and round in a huge tank of water. Looks like a snake or a worm, hence the term worm tub. And this allows the vapor basically to condense more slowly into the spirit, into liquid, and gives a little more copper contact in vapor form, but less copper contact overall than the more modern so-called shell and tube condenser. So honestly,
Part of the, sorry, I was going to just say that part of the chemistry of that copper contact is the removal of sulfur, a byproduct of distillation. So in that it's not as an efficient way of doing it, you actually end up with a bit of a meatier spirit, where it's got a little bit more weight to the palate compared to ones with shell and tube condensers that end up having a more finessed, more subtle character to the spirit.
Exactly. So basically, shell and tube condensers, the more modern, by modern, I think we're talking kind of late 1800s, but the more modern form,
Whippersnappers.
Yeah, they give more copper contact, and the worm tubs give actually less copper contact. But there's this kind of this kind of paradox that there's more copper contact of the vapor while it's in vapor form, whereas the shell and tubes condense the spirit or the vapor instantly, and it kind of as soon as the vapor hits it, it condenses. So there's an element of mystery as to why worm tub condensation does give a different character. It gives a more, to me, it gives a more textured character, slightly heavier mouthfeel as well.
Does the temperature of the water influence things as well? Since they've got that set up, do they play with that in terms of changing the rate of condensation?
I don't know if they play with it in terms of in that sense. I don't know, but I do know that they in the past they've used, for example, Dalwhinnie, which has also has worm tub condensers. They used to do a bottle called Winter's Gold, which was based on the fact that it's a different character, winter spirit versus
Because they did it in the winter.
and in Ardnahoe on Isla, we put in worm tub condensers. So we are the only distillery on Isla that still uses the more traditional form of condensation, despite being the newest distillery. And never tried Ardnahoe from shell and tube condensers, but I can say that the Ardnahoe spirit, I was just trying some right here. So I was at the distillery 2 days ago. The spirit is very, very, very good. It's got a real lovely mouthfeel, a lot of texture to it. So as far as we're concerned, worm tubs work for us, and they work for Talisker, as we're finding out here. Although having said that, of course, there are many fantastic malt whiskies made the other way. So
it's my understanding that the shell and tube condensers replenish the water, whereas the worm tub is filled with rainwater. So it's a more controlled environment. So the temperature doesn't actually change in a shell and tube versus once that vapor starts going through the worm tub, the worm being the coil and the tub, of course, being in the tub, that water in the tub, which is of a finite supply, doesn't cool down. It actually gets warmed up a little bit as the hot vapor goes through those copper coils. So you will see them become less effective as the process goes on, as you're working with the heart of the distillate.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there is a difference between the height of summer and the dead of winter as well. So that
I love Talisker. It is so good. And you know, keep in mind, like I said earlier, I have this romantic notion of you and your brother tasting these whiskeys, and you know, like, oh, I'm adding a little bit more water and it's younger. Let's move it into Hepburn's Choice because that's where it's at its peak versus just a drop. And then maybe we'll do it in old malt cask or cask strength if it's older. That's all well and good. On my side of the water, I get little tiny bottles, which are wonderful, and I make my my guesses on that. But sometimes a guy just knows, and he sees a price list that's got a Talisker, super rare, B, a sherry cask Talisker. I know it's going to be good. Hunter Laing, the boys have never let me down. So there's some that I can just roll the dice on, and this one I just jumped all over. It was an easy decision.
Yeah. And yeah, and Talisker, Talisker and sherry is pretty exclusively in sherry like this is quite unusual. And that I think that sweet fruitiness does work well with the pepperiness. It does subdue it a little bit, so you've got to look for it, and the peat is subdued a little bit, but nonetheless it just works, and we're very happy to be able to offer it.
Mm-hmm. I think we're ready to move on to a little bit more smoke.
Okay.
And super excited about this one. This one just landed. We got this, right at the height of smoky whiskey season, mid-August. But it certainly didn't matter. We had smoke in the air in mid-August, so I don't think people were running out to get some Islay whiskey at the time. But September, it started getting out to stores, and now it is just flying. This is the first time we've had the 10-year-old in the market. It's a brand new release for us. We had the non-age statement in Calgary for about a year and a half, and it's done really well. So super excited to get an age statement for this, and wonderful stuff. I got to go grab my bottle. I'll be right back.
Problem. So Scarabus, I'll talk about Scarabus a bit. Scarabus is our kind of flagship Islay whiskey. It's a single malt, so it's from a single malt distillery on Islay, one of the distilleries which isn't Ardnahoe. I can say that absolutely, because as I said, we don't have whiskey from Ardnahoe yet, not for another few weeks. So it's definitely from one of the other distilleries. We don't disclose which distillery it's from. We allow you to try and work that out for yourselves. And I've heard every distillery mentioned as a possible contender. So Scarabus, the word Scarabus, it means rocky place. So I said before that Ardnahoe is Gaelic, the Scottish Gaelic Celtic language for height of the hollow. Scarabus isn't Gaelic, it's Norse, of Norse origin. So Scarabus means rocky place. Bus is you see a bus around Islay, and lots of words. Lots of place names have the suffix bus, which means place in kind of Norse Viking language. So there actually was a distillery in the place called Scarabus on Islay. Only lasted 1 year. It was in the mid 19th century. It lasted for literally a few months. Then they closed down again. So they obviously didn't fancy being in the whiskey industry once they tried it. So it's not from the old Scarabus distillery, I can assure you. It's from one of the existing distilleries. So the standard version, which we call the specially selected, with no age statement on it, that is finished for a year, 6 months to a year in virgin oak casks. So it gives a lot of color and quite a lot of sweetness to it. The 10-year-old has some virgin oak influence in it, but not as much. And so you're getting more refill cask matured Scarabus single malt in there. So the color's lighter actually in the 10-year-old than in the specially selected. There's no artificial color in any of the Scarabus whiskies, and of course no chill filtration again. And it's just to me quite a typical Islay whiskey. The 10-year-old is quite leathery. There's a real leather note coming through there, kind of real barbecue flavor as well. I'm a bit distracted. There's some fireworks going off right outside my window at the moment. I'm not sure what's going on.
There's fireworks going off in my glass. You can smell the cordite.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, 46% alcohol. Again, like I said, non-chill filtered. Get some vanilla, some kind of lemony notes as well. But for me, it's very much, I get the leather, the peat smoke, and the leatheriness coming through in that one. Of the three, so we do the specially selected, the 10 years old, and the batch strength, so which is essentially the specially selected at 57% alcohol. And my favorite is the 10-year-old, I've got to say.
One of the things that I like about the 10-year-old in the non-age statement is a daily driver. That re-racking into virgin oak brings a real sweetness that kind of absorbs maybe some of the aggressiveness of younger spirit, whereas the 10-year-old has got enough time in barrel to absorb some of those hardier characters. It's a more delicate dram. It's not just the same as the non-age statement, but older. It actually has a lighter color, more Isla character. You get that, definitely that saltiness. You can really capture that Isla air that is in this glass. And where I get much more of an ash kind of quality on the palate and texture on the non-age statement. On this one, it is so integrated. It's not sitting above. It's just on this very long, light, smoky finish. It's an absolute classic Isla. It is exactly what should be expected from a 10-year-old. Maybe at a little bit lower price than other ones, though. I think the value on this is just incredible.
Good. Yeah, we try our best to make sure that it's also a kind of good everyday dram as well. And we go into the winter, fantastic winter whiskey. It's a real warmer, got a nice long finish. That peat just seems to work well in the cold weather. And yeah, it's
that's the beauty of the tasting we've had so far, is the differences in the style, so that depending on your mood, depending on the season, it's like, well, what am I feeling like today? And you can try those different, getting those different feels and characteristics that just suit you depending on the day and the time of year. So this has been a great comparison. I think Luis had said something about that as well.
Yeah, I see that. Thanks for the nice comment, Luis. I would say if you haven't tried the other ones, please do try to get hold of the other two Scarabaeus expressions. And they make a great mini flight together, starting with I would probably start off with the specially selected, then the 10-year-old, and then try the batch strength to finish, just to see how you like them in comparison to each other.
On the list. Thanks.
That sounds like another tasting.
What is the value on all three? Gary's asking.
Sean, I'll lean on you for the retail pricing on all of these. Gotcha. Doesn't want to give it up early. I understand that when you're doing a tasting, especially if you're doing a public one and you've got a whole bunch of people lined up, somebody will say, well, what's the most expensive one? And I never tell them. I always say, oh, no, this one. Here you go. Because I want people to enjoy the flight without the pretense of what it's going to cost. We don't like to lower or raise expectations. Taste it on the value of the whiskey, period, and make your evaluation. Is it first things first? Yes or no? Do we like it or not? And if we do, then it should be in your purse no matter what.
I was just
Go ahead.
Sorry, just going to reply to Trent's question. What's half a distillery? It's in Campbelltown. Half a distillery is Glengyle Distillery, which is owned by Springbank. It's not half a distillery. That sounds like I was reducing its importance. It's a full distillery, but I think they only run it about 1 or 2 months of the year. So it produces the Kilkerran. We call it the Kilkerran malt, and very nice it is too. If you get hold of that, it's nice. It's very hard to get hold of because it's produced in such small quantities. And Campbelltown is a region on its own. It's got official designation as an official region. by the Scotch Whisky Association, along with Islay, the Highlands, the Lowlands. Yeah, I think there's only actually 4 official regions. So technically the islands and Speyside, amazingly, aren't actually official regions. I think I've got that right. But Campbelltown is on its own a region, despite having just 3 distilleries in it. It's an unusual one. It's for historical reasons, because back in the 20s and 30s, there were a lot of distilleries in Campbelltown. I think more than 30, but then a lot of them closed at the beginning of the century. We're left with 3 at the moment.
There's access to water for shipping whiskey. They were able to get whiskey all over the place.
Yeah, I think a lot of their business was dependent on the US. Actually, I think prohibition probably affected it quite badly. There's no railway to Campbelltown as well. For Speyside, the railway was very instrumental to the growth of Speyside whiskey when it was built. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a number of Speyside distilleries that were able to kind of tap into that rail line. Either they built non-coincidentally right on the rail line, or they were able to get enough investment together to get their own rail to join up with the main line.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. If you go to if you go up there, some of them still have their own railway sidings. I don't think any of them actually still have functional railway sidings, but for example, Tamdhu, which is a large Speyside distillery, it's actually got quite an impressive little Victorian railway station on its premises, the Tamdhu station. Unfortunately, closed off, and trains aren't running there anymore. But it really shows how important it was back in the day. Maybe some of these will come back as people realize that rail travel, or they already realized, but kind of develop the thought process that rail transport is greener, more eco-friendly overall than road travel.
There's got to be hipsters in Scotland. We should just get them on board, and then they'll bring it all back. If we can bring back measles, we can bring back the train.
Okay, so are we ready for some dessert? Great. So yes, Kill Devil rum, which is so this Kill Devil is apparently $214 according to show.
Unfortunately, I don't have a bottle of this one to show you guys. It got empty by accident. Occupational hazard.
So this is the Panama, isn't it, Lee?
Yes, it is the Panama. The Panama column still 15-year-old. I believe the strength on it is 59.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, like I was saying, we being in the whiskey industry, we have a lot of partnerships and associations, business associations with companies which are quite heavily involved in rum. And over the last kind of 7-8 years, a lot of our customers have been developing an interest in rum as well. And my brother and I like to drink rum, and so we started to. The whiskey industry is very much about swapping casks all the time, and sometimes, or if we'll buy a parcel of casks from another whiskey blender or spirits company. Occasionally, there would be parcels of rum casks involved in these deals, and so we started to look at them and putting all these factors together, our liking for rum, our customers being more interested in rum, we thought let's launch a rum brand. So I think 2014, 13 or 14, we introduced the Kill Devil range of mostly single cask rums from, again, mostly the Caribbean, but there's some that we've sourced from other parts of the world. Kill Devil, by the way, actually says on the back label there, the Kill Devil was an old Caribbean expression meaning basically rum. It's as simple as that.
Wow. Just
yeah.
wow.
So this Cask strength rum can be pretty powerful stuff. So this Panamanian rum, it's column still distilled, so it's might not be quite as full bodied as a pot still rum, but it packs a huge amount of flavor and a huge amount of punch with that natural cask strength. These rums a rum barrel is essentially a bourbon barrel that's been requisitioned and repurposed by the rum industry. So almost all rum that we bottle has been matured fully in American oak ex-bourbon barrels. But that high strength, when it goes into the cask, really takes a huge amount of oak flavor out of the cask. So you got a lot of dark color coming from the oak. You get a huge amount of vanilla, toffee notes, and then that kind of tropical fruit, macerated tropical fruit. The Panamanian rums got that more what I think of as Spanish style, the more sweet, real sugary sweetness to it, combined with the oak, the vanilla, and the tropical fruit. So it's like this is why I wanted to finish with this one, because it's a dessert of a drink.
Andrew, I know that column stills will produce a higher ABV than a pot still, which pot stills are what are used mostly in Scotland. So the column still getting that higher ABV, are they bottling it down before it goes in the cask? Are they sorry, not bottling it down? Are they adding some water to get it lower in alcohol before they go into the wood?
Honestly, the honest answer is I don't know on this one. You would think if it's coming off the still at maybe 80% alcohol and it's already at 59, because we didn't add any water to this. So if it's down at 59 already after only 15 years, then possibly they reduce it before they put it into the cask.
Because it could just cook the wood right out of it if it goes in too hot.
If it goes in at 80 or more percent alcohol, then yeah, which might not mature as well either. But that kind of high strength. With malt spirit, we will add reduce it down to 63.5% alcohol.
Right.
From around 70, it comes off the still at 70. We'll bring it down to 63.5, which is the classic strength to put malt spirit into wood. So they may have done that in this case here, for sure. We certainly do have other rums that we bottle at older ages, which are higher, well into the high 60s cask strength after 20 years in the wood. So
and
I
these
think
are aging in Glasgow in your warehouse there.
They would have spent about a good chunk of their time in the Caribbean, I would think, and then most of the time in Glasgow or elsewhere in the UK. So yeah, you see tropical aged on some. Other companies will specify that it was distilled, matured in the tropics, which gives a different influence. Or the other expression is continental aged, which means the continent of Europe, which I think covers the UK in this term as well.
I thought it meant it comes with a really good breakfast.
Croissant.
And I'm angling for another business trip. I mean, I haven't been over to see you in a couple of years for obvious reasons. Thank you. 1 second, please. Haven't been over to see you for a couple of years, and maybe we could meet up and tour the Panamanian facility or something in Guyana.
Yeah, well, maybe.
A little nicer weather.
Yeah, maybe Jamaica. Or I can send you to El Salvador if you want. I might not want to go.
Great. Michael, yes, I would definitely advocate adding a couple of drops of water. Similar to the whiskeys, there's no chill filtration. Those oils are left in, so you will activate the oil, and it'll give you take a little bit of that edge off, but not necessarily by diluting the alcohol, but more by activating the oil and having something for your palate to hang on to. Yeah. So I know you've brought in some other Kill Devil rums. Excuse me. Yeah, I've got a Guyana right now that is bottled down to 46, and that is a 17-year-old. And it's kind of funny when we look at the pricing on whiskey. You know what? Indulge me for 1 second. I've got this gorgeous little girl here that wants to show off some of her coloring. Isn't that amazing? The joys of working from home. Thank you, sweetheart.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
Yeah. The Guyana, even though it is a couple of years older, because it's bottled at 46%, excise taxes and then VAT taxes coming out of the UK end up pushing the Panama one a little bit higher in price, even though it's a younger whiskey. It's all about that extra alcohol that's in there. We also bring in the Navy, which is a blended rum. That I'm sadly out of stock right now, but some coming soon, and that is also bottled at 46%. And that price tag, being not single cask, is pretty approachable stuff. We're typically getting on that shelf for about, I want to say 85 is what we're looking at. That it won't have the French word, the puissance of the Panama, but it has a very, again, dangerously approachable style.
I think the Navy style should be at 57%.
Oh, my bad, 57. Okay.
So that leads into my next point about that. It's a fantastic rum for cocktails or for mixing, even a rum and coke. It's designed both to be a sipping rum and a kind of mixing rum as well. It works both in both purposes.
I think at the higher strength, it would carry the flavor through a lot better than your Bacardi at 40%.
Exactly. Yeah, we sell a lot of
taste the rum
to the kind of tiki kind of culture. They're mixing it a lot, and yeah, you want that higher alcohol so it holds its own in a nice cocktail. And you mentioned the Guyana as well. So the Guyana rums tend to be a little more funky, in that they've got that kind of real fermented fruit note to them.
Banana all day. You got a real tropicality on the fruit, and the alcohol seems to kind of cut through that banana character. A little less woodsy, and definitely more fruit. And color wise, I found they're a little lighter as well.
Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to the real kind of extreme flavors, we bottle some really interesting rums from Jamaica, from various distilleries in Jamaica. Some of them which are real love it or hate it styles of rum. I think you'll be bringing in some of those in the future, Lee, if you haven't already.
Yeah, and some of those age statements really get up there too. So part of kind of introducing this brand under my stewardship has been about getting people an opportunity to jump on board with the Navy, get used to that kind of style of rum. Still very much a sugar product. I mean, these are made from sugar cane or molasses. So unlike barley based, where we've got to kind of tease that sugar and that alcohol out, it's just so prevalent in rum. And as we get into the real older styles, especially if they're aged in the UK, if they're aged continentally, they end up really getting quite light. So I wanted to make sure that I had a nice firm toehold with classic rum style. And then once we've got our fan base, then we can start to introduce some of the older stuff as well. Excellent.
Well, it's always going to be a sideline of our business because we're whiskey people, but it's great to be able to offer these rums, and we're going to keep doing it and keep looking for new and interesting rums. And actually, we've got quite a lot of. We find that Guyana pot still rum works very well with a finishing period in an ex-Isla whiskey cask. So we actually bottled one a couple of years ago, a Guyana pot still that had been finished in a ex-Port Ellen sherry barrel, and that was really added another element of smoky fruitiness to it. So we've got a few more experiments in the works, so please look out for those in the next 6 or 12 months.
Official tester right here. I'll be the guinea pig on that. That sounds amazing.
look out for the samples. Hopefully I'll be able to come out and you'll let me into the country and we can do some tastings in person.
I think it's been long enough they've forgotten about what happened last time.
Yeah, good. Got a new passport
Nothing
now.
happened. I'm just joking. He's fine. He's very well behaved.
I don't know any of the stories behind this, so I'll let you back in.
I do have a question about something you mentioned early on regarding Idaho. Now, is this your distillery? And so are you then, this is something new then for you, because you've been bottlers for such a throughout your
Decades.
history, and now distillers?
Yes, exactly. So it was always our father's dream, and certainly my brother and I had the dream to make our own single malt whiskey, because we've always worked with and sourced and matured and bottled other people's spirit, but to be able to craft from nothing our own was always our absolute kind of goal in the industry or in our careers. So when we basically started working with our dad and all joined together in 2013, we took the decision that we were in this for the long run, and rather than try and buy another distillery that was maybe surplus to another company's requirements, and there weren't really many opportunities anyway for that, we just started with a blank sheet, and we always knew that Islay was where we wanted to build, because Islay whiskey is so distinctive. There's such a fantastic culture of whiskey making on the island, and in fact we've got some family connections, because my dad in the 60s, he learned that he was sent by our grandfather to Bruichladdich to learn the art of whiskey making, and then about 15 years ago my dad sent me to Bruichladdich to learn the art of whiskey making, and then going further back, maybe a couple of 100 years, we've actually got family who lived and were buried there in the churchyard, the famous round church in Beaumore. So we feel quite connected to Islay, and we're a West Coast company. We're based in Glasgow, as opposed to having our center of gravity in Speyside. So all these reasons made us want to choose Islay, and so we spent some time, a lot of time on the ground, and we found this perfect spot in the northeast of the island, next to that loch, with this wonderful location. Really, it's very picturesque, as well as being good from a whiskey making point of view. So we were able to thankfully purchase the land and design and build what to us was the perfect Islay whiskey distillery. So we're now, like I said, almost 3 years into the process in terms of having spirit in the casks, and it's our absolute labor of love. So the first bottling that we ever do will be the most important one, because that will be the introduction of Ardnahoe to the world. So we're taking our time. The whiskies, or the spirit which is about to become whiskey, is, in our biased opinion, fantastic already, but we're in no hurry to release it. The whiskey will know when it's right, and we'll know when it's the right time. So I think another couple of years, and we'll have something we can really be proud of and be proud to introduce. And that's something to look forward to for certainly for us, and we hope also for Islay whiskey lovers. It's true that we've never been distillers before, but our team that we assembled certainly had a huge amount of experience in terms of making whiskey. So our distillery manager, Fraser, he's got a huge amount of experience in the industry, working at various distilleries around Scotland for the last 30 plus years. And so have the team around him, many of them. And we've also got apprentice distillers who are learning the craft from their elders. And to start with, when we built it, and when we did the all important first few runs of the distillery, we had Jim McEwen, who's our dad's good friend and the famous master distiller from Bruichladdich, and then from before that, Bowmore. He was the first master distiller for Ardnahoe. So that was a real pleasure to work with him. A great font of knowledge, and really allowed us to sleep well at night, knowing that it was in the hands of someone with so much experience. And yes, it's paid off. We're pretty happy. So watch this space, and I'm sure Lee will have some nice bottles of Ardnahoe to bring to market within probably 2 to 3 years from now, I think.
And before you think that there's nothing to do or see there, if you get out to Isla and you want to go up to Ardnahoe, it's just a fantastic, dare I say, magical place. That not only has a great restaurant and is a truly beautiful spot, but there's 1 or 2 of the Hunter Laing bottlings there to try as well. Stuff that sometimes I can't get over here. So if you are planning a trip to Scotland and you have, I would make it almost the destination. I would not go to Scotland these days without spending some time on Isla. Business aside, it is a truly wonderful spot. I mean, now there's 10 distilleries, and you can get to them all within a couple of days. Obviously, if you like smoke, it's a real destination, but you're not limited to that. There are definitely some less smoky options, and it's just a fantastic place. Ardnahoe, the spot itself, and a number of the other distilleries, they're okay too. We like them.
You might have heard of some of them. There's
1 or 2.
But
Well, congratulations, and looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. I would love to welcome any and all of you to Isla and to Ardnahoe. And we've put a lot of thought into the visitor experience as well. So
That really shows.
Several or almost all of the other distilleries are quite old. So these would be Victorian factories which have evolved, and they're wonderfully evocative and tremendous places to visit. But starting from a blank sheet, we knew that there were going to be a lot of visitors coming to see us, and so we factored that in. So it's a great place to visit in terms of easy to move around. You're not having to duck down underneath tanks and awkward spaces, and we've got a nice large and very COVID friendly shop because it's so large an area that people can move around easily. And we've also got a restaurant, fantastic restaurant and cafe with, I would say, possibly the best view of almost any distillery or almost any cafe. It's a wonderfully relaxing place to sit and have a dram or have a coffee or have lunch. And yeah, please come and visit us and we'll take good care of you.
Is that road any easier to drive?
It is, because the council have insisted that we upgrade. So it's extremely easy to drive now.
Oh, where's the fun in that?
It's a test of skills. You're on the correct side of the road, and it's windy and turny. And if there's a truck coming, you got to make some guesses. Who's going to give first?
Are there fearless, feckless sheep?
It's
That was one of the issues we had at one point. Was there were sheep just
everywhere, and they didn't care.
They don't.
Well, I think that probably brings us to the end. So I'd just like to thank all of you, and say again, Slán Java, and appreciate your attention, and I look forward to meeting you in person sometime not too soon, not too distant future. I'm sure we'll be able to travel again easily enough in 2022.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah,
We appreciate it very much, the time that you've given us here, and for staying up so late, or I'm not sure, maybe to share your stories and your knowledge, and to enjoy a dram with us Canadians here in Calgary.
No, I appreciate it very much. Appreciate your club and your shop support, and thanks as always to Lee for helping us get our bottles to the market. So
agreed,
cheers.
Lee. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone, for the participation. Any questions, just ask.
Okay.
Here,
I'll-
folks.
Bye, Lee. Bye, everyone.
Take care, Andrew. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night
Sean.
and thank you. We'll have to hunt you
Good night
down
and thank you.
in visiting those zones. Oh,
Take care, Lee, man. That was awesome.
That's right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very
and
much.
thank you. This was our first session.
Oh, great.
Yeah, well, I will say just a question. We tend to ask a lot of questions and engage
Yeah.
a bit. Is that okay? Because I don't
That
want
is
to
more
overwhelm
than
other
okay.
people.
That is absolutely more than okay. You know, sometimes there's the occasional lull here,
Mhm.
and I'll fill it. But we're here to answer questions, and it is our pleasure to share. And especially if you put me on the spot, and I don't know, I have an opportunity to learn something for the next time.
It's a
Yeah,
learning,
there you
it's a
go.
learning
There's no
op-
shame. Anybody that tells you they know everything about whiskey is lying. That is impossible. That is absolutely impossible. So
This was-
always happy. There's never a bad question. And if I don't know it, I can look it up and I can get the info to you eventually.
Sounds great.
all of
These were just a delight.
delicious.
This is a delight.
And
And we're so glad to have you guys across the street from us.
yes.
This is
Yeah.
very dangerous. Literally, we're walking distance from the new store.
What I should say,
Sean,
is you're welcome.
your team, the staff there have really been amazing in terms of introducing us to all sorts of new things. So thank you very much, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Well, I
Cheers.
started
I
this
hope
out of a
everybody
member-
else. Oh, and we had a comment from one of our people that one of our workmates. We were saying we're going to be doing the whiskey tasting, and she had the misconception that you would swish and spit.
We're like, are you high?
Kidding me? No,
I don't even do that at
no.
wine tastings. I'm sorry, no.
Not at home,
We don't have
especially.
to drive
This
anywhere.
is clearly someone who's not in the know. In any case, we should let you go and enjoy your
The rest of
evening.
your evening.
Thank
And
you so much.
And say to your daughter that her artwork looks very nice.
She was bugging me the whole tasting. It's like, okay,
Well,
fine.
I saw the corner of the piece come through and you're like, right now.
Well, and I have to apologize for kind of chiming in late there. We ended up getting stuck. I'm trying to get some supper happening and get all that. I'm like, oh, I gotta get on the thing. So I don't know if you saw, I thought my video was off, but at one point I was listening to the thing driving home.
Yeah, we saw
And
you
I
in your
know-
car with the
I noticed my
seatbelt.
video was on. I was so embarrassed, but you
You
know what
came
it is. What
inside
it
and
is.
she came through and she's like, hi. I was like, oh, there she goes. No, you shouldn't be embarrassed, quite
No, that's
frankly.
life.
Yeah, that's life.
part of life,
Yeah.
and kids
They're-
have to grow and be kids to be able to be
Yeah.
good adults.
Exactly.
This is the truth. This is the truth. Well, thank you very
So
much.
have a great
Great
weekend,
question.
guys.
We'll
Oh,
see you soon. Have a great weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Aloha.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice work, Sean. That's an engaging group.
Yeah, they're fantastic. And there's a whole bunch that normally show up that are just not available tonight. But yeah, we've had up to 40 some people on a couple of them. And but yeah, no, good group. And I thought that that he did fantastic tonight, and really appreciate him staying up and doing that.
I'll make sure to